Yep, okay. All right, if I could have everyone's attention, please. Good evening. Thank you for coming out on this wonderfully sunny, warm spring day. But at least the sun is shining, so that's a good thing. We are continuing to work through the process here of developing our master facility plan. We're getting down into the last few steps. I think everyone here tonight has been here previously, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Cheryl and let her lead us through the process here tonight.
Yeah, so again, to piggyback that, thank you so much for, I just lost an earring, for all your participation and hard work. It is not uncommon to see people start to fall off as the weather warms, and as we just weed out those last few steps. So we're nearing the finish line, which is great. You guys have done an awesome job, so collaborative, genuine, hardworking. So this has been great. You know the agenda, updates. Topic of tonight, we're going to continue about talking about LFIs. We did issue some homework. Josh is going to talk about those survey results, and then we'll do our group discussion and report out. So in our last meeting, we really talked about locally funded initiatives, what is included in an OFCC project as a base, and what is additional. So we introduced some thought starters, some common LFIs that school districts put in, especially for middle and high schools. And then we talked, we drilled in about things like auditorium, maybe extra gym space, some things that we know are necessary, such as at South Elementary for improving traffic and road circulation, and so on. So we want to drill a little deeper into that tonight. Before we launch into the homework survey results and we're deeper into the LFIs, we do have a few updates. I'm going to go to the second one real quick, and I'm going to turn it over to Amy. The second bullet point says annual cost update. And we've been talking about that. We introduced it last meeting, that we know every first week of April, the commission, the state, issues an annual cost update to reflect the current inflation rate for the state. And they actually subdivide it into 8 regions. So the inflation rate may be different for each region. We presented 2 weeks ago, the last meeting, that we were applying 5%. That was the number that the commission advised us to utilize at the time. And we heard an update that it's looking more like 6.8%, so not a little north of what we thought and hoped for. So by next facilities committee meeting, I'll have all those numbers updated to the 6.8, including LFIs that we're targeting after this meeting. And then we believe the first week of April, they will go live and official. It might still adjust up or down from that 6.8, but that's what it's looking like right now. And then, Amy, do you want to give an update about the Howden Buffalo site?
Sure. Updates about sites in general. All of you have given us a lot of feedback and ideas about sites, and I believe at this point we have checked out or are checking out everything that has been shared with us. Most of those sites have not proved to be options for us. There is still one that's on the table that we're still investigating some things about. But specifically, the Howden Buffalo site is one that has come up many times as a potential option. And we went so far as to make arrangements to do some EPA work there to see if it really would be a viable option. However, throughout that process, we talked with the Economic Development, I just lost the name, Economic Development Finance Alliance, thank you, Tuscarawas County, EDFA, who actually is the owner of that site, and they have indicated to us that they have zero interest in selling it to the school, that it is not for school use, and they have other plans for the site, and we need to take it off of our possibility list. So with that being said, I just wanted to share that we have done our due diligence with that they have said it's not an option, and so we are moving on. We still have another one that we're working on. I hope to bring further updates about that site at our next meeting. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Josh. We didn't have a great, for the first time, a great response in terms of participants in the homework. I think only, 29 participants. So we still want to share it, but that's why we're kind of continuing this conversation today, because we do want some more data. Talk about it and flesh it out a little bit more before we make any final decisions. So turn it over to you.
Yeah, so there were only 7 questions. And as Cheryl said, only 29 people have filled it out so far or taken the survey. So take the results as they are. Probably a little skewed. Question?
My link would not work.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah,
Good to know.
Did anybody else have that issue?
I did try to fill it in, just it said, let's say.
Why didn't you get home at all? I never even received
I never received
it. No, me neither.
Yeah, my link was dead. I couldn't
Mine
get
did.
it.
So we are going to reissue it again. So it wasn't an opportunity lost. That's why we're revisiting it now. I'm glad that we are, and we have this conversation. So we'll figure out and work out. See, the author that said that is not here tonight, right? Next meeting. No, we'll get it worked out and make sure that everybody
Thank
has
you for
access.
letting us know.
Yeah.
So question 1. This question was asking if you wanted to do a 7 through 12 or a K through 6 school first. Pretty clear consensus on this. 25 people voted to do the elementary school first. I think in previous meetings, this has come up as a common theme. The second question. So we discussed LFIs last meeting, and we explored the idea of an auditorium, and we also discussed the fact that OFCC will co-fund a cafetorium. So the question was basically asking, would you rather do an LFI for an auditorium or a cafetorium? And there's results all over the board on this one. The most voted for answer was construct a new auditorium for 1,200 seating capacity. So there was an other answer where you could type in what you wanted. And some recurring things that we saw and some things that people said was, I believe a new auditorium would be valuable to the district. I would support the initiative, but I don't think it would be best opportunity to pass the levy, as I don't think the overall community would support the price tag. Again, that bottom answer kind of says the same thing. I don't know if using that type of money for LFI is going to come across well to the community. So the third question was different funding sources possibly for a new auditorium. So this one again had a very common theme. Most people voted for trying to look for other funding sources, whether that be donors or sales of previous school buildings or sites that we have. So the fourth question was really talking about keeping and retaining the 1958 section, the athletic and music wing of Welty, and 23 people voted to keep it for uses, whether at last meeting things came up about partnering with the Y or using it for community use or maybe even selling it out as options. And quite a few people commented on saying, it's hard to know it's hard to answer depending on where the new high school is going to be. So if it's 10, 15 minutes away, is it going to be worth it to keep it or not? And the cost of operating just part of that old building might not be worth it as well. So the fifth question was, last week I discussed renovating and moving the Board of Education to Quaker Dome. So this question was asking for potential funding mechanisms for that piece of the project. So the majority of people voted for, I believe we should use other internal sources to pay for this LFI. We will talk about that later as well.
Can you go back?
Yes.
So that comment right there, did you touch, I was texting Ryan about the survey networking. Did you clarify about how, when we asked that question, we were talking about central office and administration?
Yes,
You did clarify that?
So we were talking about moving the central offices and basically mainly offices and conference rooms into the Quaker Dome. So it came up in the last meeting as well. You can meet You can have district meetings wherever, so that could be here like they are now or in a cafeteria. So you wouldn't necessarily need to build a big new space for that. It would just be moving a bunch of offices into Quaker Dome. Pretty minimal renovation costs.
So when you, I mean, like, say Board of Education, is that also like the school?
Yeah, so we're talking about
So, you know, that question is like, do they really need, so maybe that's not very clear to people.
And the good thing is, since we're reissuing it, we're gonna rephrase it. But no, yeah, so thank you, is that your comment?
It's just, no, that wasn't my.
But no, that makes sense, it's central
I just-
office, it's all the administration spaces that are here, that runs the school district, we just typically call it the Board of Ed, but central office administration, so, superintendent's office, treasurer, everything that occurs, back there, moving to Waco.
So the 6th and 7th question were pretty much built into the same question, or one and the same. They were pretty much asking any comments, questions, and concerns on LFIs were missing, or LFIs that you'd want to take out, or just any questions and concerns. So these were some of the answers that people had filled out. A lot of people also skipped these questions. So some of the recurring themes and comments that we saw were look for space for future growth in the LFI, just find a high school site, build the school where the school is now, so you'll lower land acquisition costs. It's too early to tell because we don't know location for high school yet. And then the big quote in the bottom was talking about LFIs for bigger classrooms, better quality, allowing for quality care for the younger kids, PK and K, giving extra space for a gym. So that was the basis, I guess, of that question in the poll that went out. So next, we are going to reiterate and look at kind of the difference between cafetoriums and auditoriums, because this is something I think that we touched on last week's, or 2 weeks ago's meeting. So.
Thank you. And just real quick, going back to the last one, in all the previous ones, we were able to put all the comments up here that we did get back in terms of feedback, because there was only 29 respondents. Sans one on this one, there was one additional comment, but it was really related to the Howden Buffalo site, which is out of play now. So due to not having enough room, because it was a very lengthy comment, and knowing Howden Buffalo site, it's not up there. So I just wanted to let anybody know, especially if they made the comment, why it wasn't up there. All right, so, we talked about the difference between a cafetorium and the difference between an auditorium, but I wanted to show you some visuals, some graphics, so it can give you some context and understanding of the difference in terms of aesthetics and feeling and look of what the difference is between these two spaces. So let's start with auditorium. This is Brunswick Middle School. They actually built an auditorium dedicated for the middle school population. And, you can see here in terms of aesthetics, we have the big difference between an auditorium and a cafetorium is the fixed seating. So here we have fixed upholstered seating here. It's on a raised elevation, a transitional elevation here. We have carpet flooring. You can see the acoustic baffles at the top. We have acoustic treatment on the side. This is the stage here. So the person who took this picture was standing on the stage, looking back here. So you kind of get the vibe and the feel of what an auditorium looks like. This is Fremont Ross High School. I think this one seats about 850 persons. Again, carpet flooring. You see the baffles up here. Now this one's viewing towards the stage, different viewpoint here. So you can see the performance area, backstage areas, and the back wings here, all the support spaces. And here you can see the projection booth up here at the top. But again, the same feel and vibe. A very professional type performance feeling. This is Lorraine High School. This project's actually, probably almost 10 years old now. More modern look than some of the previous pictures I just showed you, but again, the same finishes, the same vibe and feel, large stage, proscenium opening, the projection booth up here. We have the lighting system, we have sound system, and so forth in here. And actually those elements, lighting and sound, are provided in a cafeteria space as well, which I'm going to show you after this last one. This is a 712 facility. It's very similar to the grade configuration we're talking about for a middle high school. This is North Olmsted Middle School High School. They had a more Georgian style for the whole building, and they really wanted a collegiate feel to it, as you can tell here by the finishes and the aesthetics in here. And this one seats about 850 people. In this auditorium space there. So examples of what an auditorium space in today's architecture construction look like in schools. And now let's look at cafetoriums. Now, obviously a very different look and feel and vibe. This first example, however, is an elementary middle school, so different grade configurations. But the biggest difference too is obviously the seating, because it serves as student dining. Why we call it cafetorium, mainly, but also serves for performing and music purposes. So seating is provided, this whole space is provided, co-funded under the OFCC. The seating has wheels, and the benching and tables have wheels, can be put away after student dining purposes are concluded, and then another type of seating brought in, typically folding chairs like we have back there, for performance purposes. So that's the first difference, is the seating. The second big difference is the type of flooring. Because it does serve for student dining, it needs to be a waterproof type floor finish. So we typically put down a vinyl, a VET, vinyl flooring, or a luxurious vinyl tile flooring, luxury vinyl tile flooring as well, compared to carpet that you see in auditoriums. But you still have, as you can see here, we have the lighting system, we have our sound systems, we have acoustic treatment, and so forth. Really cool thing, though, about Dalton is what they chose to do. Here you see the stage. There's actually a partition wall that you can close this off, and another one back here. It's cut off. You can't see it from this angle. But so student dining and performances, they can open it up. But if they have band and music going on, which is on the other side of the stage, they can close this off, open that one up, and both activities can occur at the same time.
How many people fit in that space?
I don't
Like how many students go to that school, and then like how many, if they have a band concert, like how many people could you fit?
capacity. So I'll look that up when you're working out in front of you. I don't know about that.
I was just
my head.
curious.
No, that's a great question. This project was completed before I joined TDA, about 9 years ago, so I don't know that exact number. But I can look it up. This picture doesn't look very inspiring because it was done during construction near the end. Nothing was set up yet. But I wanted to show it for a specific reason. Richmond Heights is, again, the same configuration we're talking about, a 7 through 12 school. This actually is not an OFCC project, but they were limited to funds, so could not do a full-fledged auditorium. So what we did here in this project, if you look right back here, this is the purpose of me showing you this. These are telescoping stands. These are like bleachers, but if you look at the top row, which is open, they have fixed seating, upholstered seating, auditorium seating mounted into each bleacher. And the other ones, they actually fold in as they roll it into this wall, which really doesn't take up a lot of space, but when they're not utilizing it for student dining, so think we're standing on the stage. This picture was taken standing on the stage looking back. They can move the furniture out, and then they literally pull these out. They're operable just like your bleachers are today, and you have the appearance and the usability of auditorium seating that we showed in the previous pictures. And when you're not using it, I don't know why my earring keeps falling out. When we're not using it, it folds right back up into that wall, and then the multi-purpose student dining tables and chairs can be brought back in. This is North Ridgeville Academic Center. It is another cafetorium. This was actually ribbon cutting, so you can see the place, it was packed. This school houses several thousand students in grades 3 through 8, actually. But it did give a good vantage point of the stage, the size, the theatrical lighting, the acoustic panel treatment, the acoustic baffle ceilings, and how many people you actually can fit. Kind of piggybacks off your comment, how many people you can fit in here. During this particular event, they utilized the traditional student dining, student dining tables and seats here. But you can see, they do have a full-fledged stair. They had a podium that they bring in. There's a sound system, speakers on each side. And for this particular performance, they had band up here at front in the beginning, at the front of the auditorium in front of the stage. Just a few more for high school. This is John Marshall High School in Cleveland. Again, you can see the lighting with sound system, with the acoustical treatment again, but the floor finishes again are waterproof, student dining chairs, and there's the stage there. And lastly, I believe, is that John Adams? I can't see very well. John Adams, again, same vantage point, viewpoint, same type of finishes and systems in there. So you can see a big difference in terms of aesthetics. When it's a high school, you still get some OFCC co-funded spaces, whether you do a cafetorium or you build that auditorium house as LFI. In high schools, you get co-funded the makeup and dressing rooms, the projection room, the stage equipment, and a mid-range sound and lighting system. Typically, when school districts choose to do an auditorium, you're paying for that house, you're paying for an upgrade in finishes, you likely have an augmented sound system and lighting system, as well as rigging that's a little different, and fly systems that are above and beyond. OFCC will not pay for a fly system.
Did you say that the backstage and dressing areas or the auditorium would be funded by the state, or it was part of the budget?
It's co-funded. Yeah, those spaces are co-funded by the state for high school levels.
And is it, I don't know a whole lot about architecture and I don't know a whole lot about performing arts, but we have a beautiful performing arts center about a mile down the road from us. And I became friends with our original director, and he shared with me that because he was not part of the original building project, like the dress rehearsal rooms, the storage in the building, none of that was made big enough to hold hundreds of students with instruments, or, my daughter danced there. You have 100 little dancers with no clothes on, all together, with no privacy, no space to move. So is that in the plan to make it be usable? If you're gonna have 1,300 people come and watch a show, are those people gonna have area to be able to get ready for that and the space?
That's a great question. So, very good question, actually. So in the 1,200 seat model that we showed last meeting, and it was about $13.2 million, we had those co-funded spaces, the spaces you just mentioned per OFCC, and we actually had additional space as LFI to augment them in terms of size, because we do, he's right, those spaces, the size that they provide are typically inadequate, and we do need to enlarge them in the stage as well. So in the models that we presented, we're already thinking about, and this was in a vacuum, right? Because we did this is thought starters, but if this comes to fruition, we have to vet this out a little bit more. We did augment the stage over 1,000 square foot more than what OFCC would co-fund for. Scene shop was increased by 250 square feet. Makeup and dressing rooms by 175 square foot each. So we are thinking about that. That's a valid concern. And again, if this comes to fruition, we'll vet it out more with Jeff and his input and needs, right? Is there any other questions? Yes.
Since we're building two schools, would it be funded to do a cafetorium in the elementary school and then an auditorium for the high school, middle school?
So both schools are co-funded for a cafeteria. So both schools would get a space like this. This was our last slide. This is TIF. This isn't our project, but we're working with them and we have meetings in their newer cafetorium. And it's a really beautiful space, so I did want to show that. So all of this is like co-funded in the elementary and the middle school, high school. Now, in the high school, you'll get the dressing rooms. In addition to this, you'll get the
That's for a
scene
cafetorium.
shop. Huh?
That's for a cafetorium, not an auditorium.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any co-funding for an auditorium at all?
OFCC does not co-fund for auditoriums.
Auditoriums are completely out of pocket.
Right. But if you build, let's go back, let me show you. Here's
I
good.
think you need to be clear on
That's,
that. The co-funded parts for the cafeteria, stage, the dressing rooms and things, they remain with the auditorium.
correct.
If you do an auditorium, the biggest cost there is the seating. And the,
It's this space right here. That's what you're going to pay for LFI. Or making the stage bigger. Or the makeup and dressing rooms bigger. But in this was a good example. This was an OFCC project. And this was LFI, the seating area. The stage was co-funded. The makeup rooms were co-funded. The scene shop was co-funded. They made it bigger than what OFCC said. So that bigger part was LFI. This is the big difference here.
So, but you could get it funded to do like a cafetorium in elementary, then an auditorium in the high school, so they don't have to be the same thing.
No. Yep. I'm going to go here and then to you.
Is there such thing as a gymnasium? Yes. You're sitting in one.
Yeah. This is the stage. It's blocked off. Yeah, you could put the stage in the gym if you want. Yeah, if you want.
That was the stage.
Yeah, this was the stage.
That was the stage. I'm thinking of a new 10, $13 million version of this. How does that cost there?
Well, the gym is a co-funded space and the stage is a co-funded space. So if you wanted to do a gymatorium, yes. If you just wanted to go bigger and beyond what OFCC square foot is, then that's LFI. Does that make sense?
Just thinking, what's the secret of that cafeteria?
It's not a matter of the cost, it's a matter of functionality for the district and their specific needs. I'm going to come back to you 1 second. Go ahead.
The biggest hurdle that they have to get over with cafeteria and gymnasium is not the space itself. It is the reverberation. And you understand reverberation. Mr. Ferber, you understand. Reverberation time is the time that it takes when I say something that the echoes die down enough to understand what I'm saying. And the harder the space, the longer that reverberation time. When you're in church, you want to have a reverberation time that's greater than 2.5 seconds because religious music sounds wonderful with a long reverberation. If you're running a play or a speech, you want your reverb under 1 second so that you can understand what's being said. In an auditorium, cafetorium, gymatorium, or a gymatorium, cafetorium, your reverb time is going to be around 2 seconds. No matter how many acoustical panels they put on the wall, there's just not enough. You have to have a soft surface on the floor, you have to have soft surface above, you have to have acoustical panels that redirect the sound up above. And you just cannot do that in a cafeteria or gymnasium. So if you're looking especially at a larger space, it's going to be very, very difficult to get something that performs well.
That's what I was gonna, you almost spoke exactly. You're saying a lot of good things.
The one thing that I want to make sure everybody realizes, like, if you're the choir, or you're the band, or you're in drama, you're on the stage, the whole goal is for the sound to be, like, you're working, that's our whole job is to try to make sound, and really good sounds, you know what I mean? And then you go to a cafeteria, what's the goal there? The goal is to suppress sound, right? You don't want a cafeteria that amplifies sound, right? So they kind of contradict each other. This is, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I for some reason my mind was thinking with this stadium, Taylor Swift, nationwide arena, like, wait a second.
Yeah, Lucas Oil is where the largest band, high school band organization holds their championships. But they also have paid, I forget what it was, a lot of money for the entire backside of the covered velvet. Like if you are at Lucas Oil, like if you're on the Colts side, you're looking across, there you cannot see the other side of the stadium because there's just a gigantic velvet. It's thick. It's like we've been there in Nashville too. And you can't even hardly move it with your hand. And it covers the entire side.
I just wondered if from the school facility, there's a happy medium between.
No, that was a great question, and we have put the stage in gyms, but it comes back to, like I said, and then you piggyback the functionality, what is occurring in those spaces? Is the intended uses, and by that design, can we meet them? And most often times, it doesn't meet in the, putting it in there. You're next, but after somebody back here had their hand raised, like twice.
Well, I was just going to say, I thought it was interesting that the only two high school versions were inner city Cleveland public schools.
You thought it was what? I'm sorry?
I thought it was interesting, John Adams and John Hay are like inner city Cleveland public schools. I'm guessing that their arts programs aren't the focus of probably their district at the level of some of the, you know what I'm saying? I guess when I'm looking at that, I find that very challenging in the sense that I don't think that's going to be commensurate with what we're going to do for
Yeah, so
performances.
Cleveland schools, they have, certain schools, they have specific academia, they have
Right.
art schools, they have STEM
Right.
schools, they have career tech schools,
Right.
and traditional schools. So these two happened that I gave you didn't have the arts
Right.
as their focus.
Right.
But other schools did. I didn't grab them. I had so many good auditorium examples, I needed to show some cafetorium examples. And I mean, even the aesthetic and the feel of it's, it is different. I'm gonna go to you, and then we'll go back to you. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, current school has an auditorium, right? What's the size of that?
I sent that to
What
you.
was possible?
Auditorium
It
size.
has 850 seats. The stage is 1,200 square feet.
The stage is grossly undersized.
So what does the is it OFCC, is that the right name? Okay, what does the OFCC fund if a school district would choose to retain certain elements of the existing school, but do a full renovation and expansion? So would the OFCC support renovations and expansions to the existing auditorium, so we still keep that nice auditorium, right? Or make it better and bigger, right?
Well, bigger means we have to move walls, and that's a big cost. That's not just renovating. Now we're reprogramming. We are redesigning the inside. There's a cost to that, and they're not gonna pay for that for the auditorium, because the auditorium house is not a co-funded space. They will pay for renovations to the stage area and any support spaces that's in their manual. But that's it. So that'd be all on the district's dime, and given that auditorium is in the very center of the building, that would be really expensive and challenging. It's not saying it can't be done, but I don't think that is a very easy solution.
What does the OFCC fund? What would they fund if we were to retain any of the existing roof?
Simplify it, they would pay to refinish the stage floor, they would pay to put up maybe a new ceiling, they're not gonna pay to expand it, they're not gonna pay to put up bigger dressing rooms, they're not gonna pay for new seating. You might get a new floor and a new roof.
So anything within, pretend this is your auditorium, anything in this space that we're looking at, they're not gonna pay for it. And that's the hub and the heart, right? That's where everything's happening. You could get renovations for the stage, replace the stage curtain, we could do, their standard lighting and sound system, because that's part of the stage, but none of this will be co-funded. And if we blow out the walls to make it bigger and so forth, they're not gonna pay for that either.
On the other part, if I can add to that, the practicality of an auditorium on the second floor of a building, it's one of the reasons why we don't use it now. Not only is the stage too small, it's getting equipment up and back and down safely with kids and getting it onto that stage on the second floor of a building, you know what I mean? So there's the practicality. Not only do we not use it because it's too small for band in particular, but like the choir can use it, and the choir does use it in the spring, but they don't have chimes and marimbas and vibes and all these pieces of equipment that have to go find their way to the second floor of a building somehow. You know what I mean? So renovating that, in my mind, if you could solve the size part of it, it wouldn't solve the practicality of being on the second floor.
My question just goes with the cafeterias. In the middle school, high school, for all these things, it's cafeteria. Is this a combined cafeteria for all 7 to 12 students? Or is there 2 separate areas of these cafeterias or cafeterias for the 7th, 8th grade students? Does everybody eat in one space all together?
So you could do it either way. You get so much square foot per student, middle school and high school student, that goes towards, it's like, 15 square foot. They take the enrollment, divide it by 3 lunch periods, and then I think it's 15 square foot per student, something like that. And then there's a similar calculation for the stage size. So you could divide it up and have 2 smaller cafeterias, 2 stage areas, or you could have 1 mega one. That's a design question, but you have both possibilities.
We did get relief on that. High school, middle school, the district said there's going to be no mixing of the students. And there was no way to do 3 seatings without mixing them. So they gave us permission to do 4 seatings. High school and 2.
Yeah. So there is some flexibility.
We save the square footage.
Good conversation. I like having these meetings where it's just open dialogue that's needed at times. So this is really good. Were there any other questions? No? Okay. We actually kind of dived into the next section, which was, I was going to ask Jeff and Tim to talk a little bit about what they feel. Oh, I didn't go finish through these. Oh, yeah, let's go through gyms real quick. Okay, so let's talk about gyms, and then we'll go into their 2 opinions. So in our LFIs last week, we said, okay, what if we create a 3rd big gym, competition gym with a lot of locker space and so forth? We gave a really big number and cost to that. But there are alternatives to that we just think we need to put out there. And one of the things is designing gyms back to back with partition wall in between. It has great sound attenuation. But lets you have 2 separate athletic spaces going on at once, but the ability to open up into a bigger space. So this is Lorraine High School. Again, I showed you their auditorium earlier, and that's exactly what they did. Before it was a high school, so they had a competition gym and an auxiliary gym. And here's looking at the competition gym. We have bleachers on each side, of course, the acoustic treatment, and all of the bells and whistles, those are all co-funded. But this is the angle I want you to look at. Now, instead of looking this way, we're looking that way. And you can see that divider wall there, and it's closed for this particular event. But that wall opens up into the auxiliary gym, which also has spectator seating and so forth. And you can create this much larger gym without having to add additional LFI square foot. So all of that was co-funded. This is Wycliffe PK-12 school, auxiliary spelled wrong, I see there. But again, you're looking at a dividing wall. Now this is the auxiliary gym. They chose not to put spectator seating on each side, so we just have it on this side. But this can be opened up into the main gym. And then if we go look at the main gym that has the seating on both sides, and now we're looking at the same wall from the other perspective here, that's how they chose to get the most bang for their buck in terms of how many people they can fit into a sporting event. So just some things to throw out there, some thoughts that there are some additional options that we could and can't do to help reduce, or could do to reduce LFIs. I've had conversations with both Tim and Jeff about some of the more, we dove a little deeper into the details about, you know, what OFCC would give you for your program, how does that compare to what you think your program needs are. And I would like for them just to take a moment to share their initial thoughts, you know, about some of the challenges with what we've presented for OFCC or opportunities, so we can have some direction from their lens. You want to go first?
I'll go first. I completely, I'm gonna say it right off the bat, I completely understand how a cafeteria or a gymatorium, I completely understand how that seems like it makes sense, because, you know, it's not a new idea. South School has, you know, you can open the petitions and go either way, actually, to the cafeteria. But it's just those things like, to be a performer, and, you know, one of the reasons why this room sounds okay is because carpets, that, you know, and you don't want that in a cafeteria. You don't want that, you know. So there's just a lot of contradictory things. I did a little bit of research. Mark Murphy, who was the superintendent at Tusky Valley, when they started their building project, and he's still involved in it, I just asked him after I left the meeting 2 weeks, I called him and said, hey, listen, can you give me any specifics about the auditorium you built? You know, because they built a separate auditorium. And he sent me a whole detail. I'm not going to go over all the details, but the thing that struck me the most was it's a 504 seat auditorium, and he said they did it for about $5.5 million, and that made me kind of
How long was
set
it?
back.
Just out of curiosity?
504 seats.
No, how long was that?
Oh, this was probably planned 2 years ago, just executed, just built in the last year.
Okay.
Yeah, January was open house, yeah. So, you know, that makes me realize that we are talking about a large amount of money. And the LFI, I think I said this a couple weeks ago, I completely feel that that's, a lot of that weight is on the music department to go find those funds. And I'm just gonna be 100%, I don't think I've ever said this to anybody. As a band program and guiding the band boosters, I have purposely, for the last 10 years, stayed away from any grant writing, any asking, big asks. We've done it on our own. We bought the 2 red Ford pickups that we haul our things with. We bought, that was a $140,000 activity. The uniforms we just bought a couple years ago was $90,000. I've purposely stayed away from asking the people I know could really help us, because I've been waiting on this. It's just a fact.
That is great.
And I haven't gone to those people that I know, and I know there are people, and I know it's a lot, I know it's a big ask, but that's what, I've laid it all on the boosters and said, this is what we're gonna have, or the district and the booster, I should say that, because the district has helped with those projects that I mentioned as well. But so I clearly see it, you know, and maybe we do, you know, I was big on the whole 1,201, you know, the one more than Dover. I kind of played that up a little bit, you know, and if that's not, you know, that's just me being a Quaker, right? I can back that off if it's going to be 900 and we can get an auditorium and it can be, you know what I mean? But I just want it to be usable, right? I want to be able to have graduation in there. You know, we're going to have graduation in the gym. Okay, I love the graduation stadium. I love that, you know. But if you have to have an indoor one, you know, have it in an auditorium. The kids who work their tail off to be musicians and drama kids and things like that, let's give them a space that is appropriate, you know, and that's just where I'm at, you know, and I know that that's just me being a band director, but I look around and it's just like New Philly is just like, oh, it's good enough. Everything was just good enough, you know, oh, it's good enough. Central Elementary, they never finished it when we got done with World War II. It's good enough. It's still sitting there like it was left, you know. Everything, you can go around anywhere, you know, it's good enough. It's good enough. So I'm trying to not just do things that are good enough. I want to have something that's going to be something we can use and be proud of. Because, you know, let's face it, the people who built that auditorium built it in 1924, so it's going to be 100 years old next year. So if this is our one and only, auditorium we're gonna build, we're talking it's gonna be the one we use if the community's gonna be in a similar situation till, I can't do my math, the 20, what's 100 years from now? 21, 24, you know what I mean? So I'm just, I guess that's my, and you had all those details about, and she had a 1,100 seat plan, a 1,200 seat plan, and a 1,300 seat plan. And all of them, all the funding things that they talked about, and I think they're all appropriate. And like I said, if the locally funded thing would have to be scaled down and the seating would have to be scaled down or whatever to make that work, I don't ever see it being part of I guess I'm confused on that. The bond issue, like an LFI wouldn't be part of the bond issue, right? Wouldn't? I mean,
Well, it could be, it wouldn't be co-funded by the state, but it could be part of the money that we ask the taxpayers to help support.
but that's what I'm saying. If, let's say I just win the lottery, right? And somebody gives me $10 million. We don't have to do
Correct.
that. Okay, all right, I just want to make sure I was right about that.
And part of the homework was actually getting initial, and I know you didn't get it, was getting an initial pulse on what we feel like. Do we need to start looking at local dollars, not locally funded initiatives, but donations and
Right.
other revenue streams besides putting it in the bond issue?
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about
That'll
that.
be-
Don't sit down yet, though.
So I'm saying that'll be my.
I have a question for you. So
Okay.
You made some really good points. First of all, what is the graduating class size? Do you-
250.
Okay, so
This
it's a
year-
lot. Okay, so no problem.
Well, no, they'll know.
This year it's 175, it's low
Okay.
though. We're up, usually up around 210, 215.
What do you, if you have an initial opinion, if you could share with us, and if not, it's okay. What do you think the ideal seating size is? Because I threw out a comment last meeting about some people feel that having a smaller seating size for auditoriums and having sold out performances and multiple performances is a really like emotional, a
Sure,
booster to
yeah.
students. So
It's better than having a half-filled house.
half-filled house. So
Right.
do you have any pulse or idea initially on what an ideal size, what feels right for you right now?
The whole high school, Ryan, what total? How many kids?
About 825, 830 right now.
Right, so like 950 for some growth, you know. I'd like to be able to sit the whole school,
Student
if you
body.
had to, I mean, to make it a practical spot where you could do that, you know, you could sit the kids and sitting them in the gym, it's hard to get kids' attention in a gym. You know what I mean, if you had to sit the whole student body down. Where in an auditorium, you're in a focused spot, it's a little bit easier to get anyone. So, I mean, if I was gonna go, what would be it'd be something like that so that we could seat the whole school down, you know, because, yeah, it'd be great to have a filled house when you're performing, and you'd hope to bring that many people in when you do perform, but it's also a practicality thing. And maybe we say, okay, we're only gonna seat half the building at a time, so you go, all right, let's just go 700 or something, you know what I mean? But I think it'd be a good conversation with the administration about pairing that in with it too, to be able to seat the whole school into a, you know, I think it'd be good sometimes to have the whole building together, and we just don't, we can't, you know, so I guess, is that my opinion?
Yeah, no, that's I think he had a question for you.
Oh, go.
Have the enrollment projections been done yet?
Oh, yes.
Which direction are they tending?
Yeah, and it was kind of, it was like several hundred students. And actually, they were done in 2019, and it wasn't such a decrease, okay? They redid them this past year, and it was a big increase. And when we looked back to see what actually happened from 2019 till now, it happened. From 2019 till now. So we do feel that the new enrollment projections have validity. They're trending down, which is not uncommon. You know, that's been happening for 20 years.
In the first 5 years, the cohorts are viable. The next 5 years, the preschoolers haven't even been conceived yet.
Yeah, so we
Don't
do
know.
have some in our plan, in terms of pre-K, we do have additional LFI already built in. We've determined it's a non-negotiable, that's gonna be in there. But the rest of the studies and projections do appear to have some validity.
It's a design problem. My opinion would be design for future expansion
Oh, yeah.
to add seats, but don't overbuild so we don't have enough to actually fill it.
Yeah, and I don't know about your experience, but what we see, the bigger the school is, the better the square foots work out for the students to have room for growth. It's the smaller schools, so if we take the same enrollment and divide it in multiple schools, that's where we have challenges, because the square foot models work on, it's a sliding scale. And these are really big schools, so we feel pretty good that we still will have we will have buffer growth.
I think the pack's about 1,200, that gives you an idea of how big an auditorium. As a matter of fact, I think it's right at exactly 1,200.
It's 11.
Okay, it's smaller, 11.
Yeah. Dover's auditorium's 12.
Well, we're gonna be 1201 then, Jeff. Well,
That's what he said.
That was my line, yeah. But that's just, being it. Here's a question. When do things like that have to be rock solid set?
Well,
Like
if
a number of
if
seats.
we're going to put it in the bond issue this November, we need to know by the end of April, beginning of May, what we are doing. If we're not putting it in the bond, it depends if we're phasing it or not. So I should say, let's segue now into the next steps. So we have a meeting with bonding council next week, and we are going to understand our legal abilities to phasing or doing it all at once, like we talked about it in the previous meeting, put all the local share for the next phase in the bond issue now or not. So next meeting, we'll have a better idea and understanding of what pathways we can choose, and that will set time.
Now, I mean, since we're at this point right now, unless something major changes, we're basically building an elementary and then a high school, middle school. Unless
Correct.
something major changes in two separate locations. We're not talking about trying to get an auditorium for the elementary school, correct?
Correct.
Because that's why I asked about doing separate. If the state will fund a cafeteria for the elementary school, I see that as being a benefit for the elementary school to have a small performance space for the younger children, but an actual auditorium for the higher upgrades.
Right, absolutely.
That's what I was trying to get across.
Yep, so the elementary school will have the cafetorium with the stage, co-funded, like in future, we'll get credit for that. And yes, that will come with that.
Yeah, I would never push for an auditorium for the elementary school because those kids, I mean, I'm not trying to lessen what they do, but it's not what you're trying to do in high school.
That's what I was trying to, I'm just trying to make sure people understand, this isn't like something we're trying to put in an elementary building. This is something for the middle school, high school, performing arts, plays,
Right.
performances.
Yep.
Yes, I know elementary does that, but it's not as much of a production.
Right, exactly.
I know you said that we're a little bit off from like talking about numbers and things, but at what point, I mean, when you're looking at the grand scheme of all this stuff and you say that I know that this is 10% of the cost of everything that we're looking to do, and we put it on the ballot and let's say it does not pass this first time, can you take these things back off for the locally funded things?
For the next issue, for the next ballot timing, yes.
And at what point do you have a conversation about what does this cost the taxpayer? Because I'm all for getting private donations, and I think it's a great idea. $14 million is a lot of money to raise for anything, So at what point do you look at what's it going to cost the taxpayers that are here? If it's going to impact building a brand new high school and middle school, can we look at how we look at that, I guess, is what.
That's part of our conversations next week with bonding council.
So
We will have that very
As far
soon.
as what this is going to cost, so like, let's say $14 million can make my house taxes go $300 more a year before this.
So we're going to have a conversation with them. We're going to update all of the costs for 6.8% inflation. And we're going to have them run the numbers of what, if we put everything in, what is it going to cost the taxpayers per month? And if we can't, if that exceeds what we're capable of doing, or it's unreasonable to the voters, then we'll work some additional models. What if we take this out or this out or this out?
Is that all itemized? So like, how much does it cost to do the front widening of the street or whatever itself? Or are we just lumping this all in, this is what it's like?
We can look at it both ways. First, we need to see what is everything, and then we'll start looking, backwards. But that is the next step. Somebody else, I think somebody else had a question. No? All right, yes, you can sit down now.
Tim's turn.
Yeah.
You can lay that long. Oh, yeah,
In all reality, I'll be honest with you, coming to New Philadelphia from where I'm from, I'm just gonna throw it out there. I think our Weldy Auditorium performance space is embarrassing. Just is. For a district our size, the district of our caliber, it is not. I mean, it's not a good performing arts thing. It's not, sound is not good in there. I mean, we got kids that are high level performers that are performing in what looks to be almost like an elementary like performance area at our Welty in my mind. So that's one of the first things I noticed when I came to district. But anyway, that's just my opinion on that. I'll, I know how I'm gonna vote either way. But the thing about the gym space for me is that when I look at it, you look at it at the state level, the gym itself, the gym floor, I mean, you might have a little bit of differences in terms of gym floor surfaces and stuff like that, upgrades, whatever we want to do. But really what it's going to come down to for the high school gym floor is going to be seating. Because you can make a space that is going to be about the same size as we have at Quaker Gym right now. It'll have a 94-foot floor. It'll have the bleachers go back in. You can have your gym classes. You'll have your 6 hoops. And generally, it's going to be about the same that the state would offer in terms of the floor itself. But the problem you're going to run into is you're not going to have 1,800 seats. And you're not going to have a 2-tiered, you're not going to have like a mezzanine type of thing. And I think one of the estimates she gave me earlier was that you're going to have basically about 1,000, or maybe even potentially down to even 800 based on our school size, correct?
Right, and really they base the square foot of the gym on the enrollment and
Right.
then
Right.
the
So
way.
based on our enrollment, our gym size would go about half. Not the gym floor, but the actual size of the gymnasium area itself with all the seating would be about half of what it is right now. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of perspective of the difference between that 1,000 seat. I would at least think that if we're going to build a new high school gym, I think we should at least have the same number or similar number of seats we have right now with ADA compliance, which is one of the biggest detriments that we have at all of our facilities, including our high school gym, is that our ADA compliance is awful for someone that's elderly or someone that is handicapped, that has needs wheelchair access. It's very challenging for them to be able to attend our sporting events. And that's something that obviously ADA compliant, which would come with any new gym, but we have to take that into consideration. So I think about whatever we need to do to make another 800 to 1,000 seats, I think would be part of the discussion. Wouldn't be mandatory, but I think it would be part of the discussion.
Which
And
I
then
think
the
is
other part is-
4,000 more square feet.
What's that?
Isn't it like about 4,000 more square
I
feet,
think
something like
that's,
that?
I think that's what the
Yeah.
calculation was. And then as far as the middle school, now the middle school, it's like comparing, it's like the same thing as the auditorium. About the only thing that's about as bad as our auditorium at Weldy is the gym at Weldy. It's worse. Okay, it might be worse. The actual gym floor itself is a little bit, is short. I mean, it's not like a regulation floor. I don't think you have to go to a 94-foot floor for middle school, but I think you would definitely want to go to like an 80 to 84-foot floor for middle school. I think the middle school in here was 74. It's like 74 by 42, I think is. So I think anytime you could get, I think if you could get that a little bit bigger, maybe up to like an 80 by 50, maybe like a smaller, maybe a smaller high school floor that you would have, I think would be reasonable. Now, it does say in here that it does have the number of bleacher seats that is co-funded. It's about 434 for middle school gym. That's what I see on there, or is that the square footage?
I would have to
That's
go
the
back
square
and
footage,
look
I'm
at,
sorry. It says number of bleacher seats, 434 square feet. So that's not 434
No.
seats, correct?
correct.
Okay, so right now, we currently have, I think we estimated somewhere around right around 200. So, and currently at Weldy with only on one side, I would say we would want to have that be at least twice that size for a middle school event. To probably have at least 200 on one side and 200 on the other, and a little bit larger floor than what's currently there. And that's kind of what I would have expectations for gym size if we go to that. Now, in terms of a wrestling room and weight room, I think that's all dependent upon what we do with the with the current facility we have at the high school right now. And I was the one that made the comment in there. It's like, if the new school would be really close to that gymnasium, then obviously you're not gonna need some of those gym spaces because it would be right there, or at least easily accessible for our kids. But if the school's gonna be a mile or whatever away, I think it's gonna be not very likely that we're gonna be able to ship our kids to that location to do all that stuff. We might need to have a space for a wrestling room / weight room if that space is not available. That would be sort of my opinion on kind of where we are. So just to kind of recap that, we need about twice as many bleachers that would be in the co-funded space for the high school gym. And then I would say that we would probably need to add some bleachers, maybe have the floor be a little bit bigger in the middle school gym.
What about locker rooms? Like how many? Because
locker rooms right now, ours are so kind of, I mean, they're kind of piecemeal in and of themselves. I mean, right now we have technically 4 locker rooms at the high school with like 3 coaches' offices, and then we got space over Glody. We got a coach's office and a couple locker rooms. I mean, I think our locker room spaces that we have now are pretty adequate. I think when I showed you those numbers, I'm not necessarily sure that I think the space would be big enough. It just might not have the same number of locker rooms themselves. We might need to divide that up a little bit, but I don't think the square footage seemed to be off that much in terms of locker room space. I mean, that's my thoughts.
So it sounds like compared to last meeting where we put like a whole another third gym in, whole new locker rooms and so forth in there, and it was a big space and a big price tag. It sounds like we can pare that down to the requirements that you just outlined today, 2 gyms, but larger so we can accommodate more seating. And, just double check that locker room space and bring that LFI down quite a bit, it sounds like.
Well, and I think too, the other thing too, I think it would be reasonable at our elementary gym if we could have some seating in there, because I know that doesn't come generally.
Right.
I think that would be a good idea to have at least some seating at the elementary gym, that you could have some sort of competition there. I think that would be, that would be ideal, but I'll also say this too to everyone in here. I would need to go to some places that have built recent gyms. And really, like, we were at West Holmes. I know West Holmes doesn't seem to be like it was built about 20 years ago, but there's a lot of things that I really liked about that gym. There's some other spaces that have been done that I would like to be able to visit before I would ever sign off on, hey, this is the gospel. I would kind of like to see what some other people have done to at least investigate that a little bit tighter, because you think that it's no big deal. But like you have like major things, like they put the electric on the wrong side of the gym for the scores table, that you think that where we always have our home scores table for the bleachers, well, in some buildings, they put that on the wrong side of the gym. So they put that on the visitor side, and it got and then they had to tear up the gym floor and do stuff. So there's a lot of little things that go into it that, to be perfectly honest with you, takes a lot of time and effort, and I'm not there yet, but it's really challenging to put all that together at this stage. But I can tell you that if we get an opportunity to do it, I'll do everything in my power to make us sure we have the best gym we can, with the money we got. So that's my.
Thank you. We're doing our group work right now, just so you haven't realized that yet. A little different format than previous ones, but I think this is good conversation. So we heard from, department heads here. What about community members? They're not teaching in the schools. Have you thought of any space beyond what we've talked about that you feel would be important to incorporate in the schools? Again, beyond what we've already talked about. Any thoughts on that? Yes.
My name's Ashley Claxton. I'm a district librarian here in the district. It's important for everybody to know that we do still have school libraries in each of our schools that we utilize. And, excuse me, I'm sorry. Our K-5 students have library built into their special schedule. So it's something that they do every 6 days and have the opportunity to take a book or 2 books home. At the K-5 level, those print books are still very much an important part of our curriculum and our offerings. We have libraries at the middle school and the high school as well. We do a lot of online resources in those schools, but we still do have print collections in those schools as well. So I mention that only to say that in the role of a librarian, in this day and age, you are constantly evolving, right? And that's something I expect in my job and expect in the spaces that I serve in. But I do just want everybody to know that we gotta count that in. It's still important to our district.
And they're, I'll go right with you. We do have a full-size, media center in there. Again, it's based on number of students, so much square foot per student. The option to have librarian office, the option to have conference room, and how we slice and dice it is changing. There's an evolution. I see you're very passionate about it, and I know you're speaking since you see libraries like kind of the traditional library that we went to school with, kind of not as present in schools as they used to be. But there are ways to design them into, if a school has like wings of collaboration areas of so forth, or grade levels and so forth, and we can embed smaller media centers in the center of each space. So it's not necessarily this one giant library space, but there's these more smaller communities of libraries in each wing. But the space is there to do that, whether it's put together or separated. So it is not a lost thought, or it is an important integral part of the program, and it is captured right now.
And I guess just to piggyback off that, we actually in the libraries had a really wonderful opportunity when we grade banded, because we were able to better specialize our library collections to the audiences that they served. So when you talk about, a differentiating spaces for different audiences, that's something we're already used to. I just want to make sure everyone knows that it's something we still got to keep on the table, however it looks.
Anybody else? I'm sorry, you had a question.
You sort of answered. I was just wondering, how much square footage per student is allowed for library space?
I don't remember it off the top of my head, but if you stick around after the meeting, I'll look it up. It's so much square foot per student.
Yeah, I figured there's a designation. I was just
There
curious
is.
what it was.
Yeah, there is. I should know it. Do you know it? You remember it?
Well, that's 10 years ago.
I know. We'll get it for you.
It was always that.
Yeah.
Is it really that big of a price difference to cut back on seating in a gymnasium? Just coming from the perspective of a parent, just thinking if your same class sizes are 200, 250, and you have a middle school gymnasium that will only hold 400, that means if you want to have an event for your students, there's not even enough seats for each student to have both parents there watching them. That doesn't even include siblings or anything like that.
No, it's based on students.
I just wonder how much that cost is, because to me as a parent and a taxpayer, I would want to pay for that seating to be there for all of your kids' events. And so what is that, how much of the savings is it really to cut back?
Well, so saying cut back, it's actually starting with OFCC standard, which is a number of students typically is what it's supposed to be. Square foot should allow for enough spectator seating for the number of students in the school. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way because of the design and so forth. And we know here in New Philly, like you mentioned, the high school, middle school, the high school gym, you want to seat at least 2,000, which is beyond the high school enrollment, right? So based on that example that we've been studying the last week, if I recall correctly, in order to get about 2,000 seating in there, which should accommodate parents and siblings, I don't know how many, so I haven't done the math, but I think it's about an extra 4,000 square feet, and think about $400 a square foot. Can you do the math? Can you do the math? Somebody do the math, cost?
I need to point out,
at risk of sounding abrasive, that when you're designing these buildings eventually, you're going to be having three major assembly areas. You have a middle school gym, a high school gym, and an auditorium, hopefully. That becomes not, the issue is not, do we make each one of those larger to accommodate a special event? Or do we realize that we can schedule special events to use this, to utilize those spaces? So I would say that increasing the size of the middle school gym for a hypothetical event, when you have a high school gym that could be scheduled and an auditorium that could be scheduled, might be a little overkill.
So on top of those two comments, I would say as somebody with a owner of having had a high school senior this year, who is now having graduation in the gym, the 2,000 seats. Anything less than that would be absolutely unacceptable. So small graduating class, limited number of tickets for my family to come watch him. We were calling people going, guess what? You're not watching you see you at the party, right? So anything less than 2,000 seats from my perspective in the gymnasium is not going to cut it no matter what our enrollment is. And just as a personal opinion, I don't like the back-to-back gym. Just a personal opinion, I think it looks tacky.
Yeah.
And you're not gaining anything when you open that up because of the way the walls are. You're not really gaining anything. Just an opinion. That's just my personal.
Yep.
Everybody benefits.
I agree. I mean, that's, if you look at what the ideal solution is, it is expanding the gym. But we just felt like we had to do our due diligence to show you that there's other.
It was up there. I just gave me a opinion.
No, that's great. That's
We
great.
all have those.
Go ahead.
Question about LFIs in general. We're talking about, the big ones, the gym, the auditorium. Did I see a couple meetings ago, site work facilities, those type of land costs are also LFI?
They are, actually, because I thought we were gonna go into group table work, but we're not, since we're doing a more open discussion. I do have a printout of that.
I guess where I was going with that is, in all the other schools that you've been involved with, are there LFIs that you've like, wow, they raised some money for this and working in a, that was atypical of what other school districts do?
Well, everything that we're talking about is really fairly common. You know, we have on here, there are things that I will call them being necessary to the integrity of the project. And that includes at South, traffic improvements. And then if we need a new site for the middle school, high school complex, you know, that's gonna be necessary too. And those aren't uncommon. I've seen a district buy an entire city block. It's a little excessive, but, you know, they have, you know, done land acquisition to gain enough square footage for their project, as well as traffic and road improvement. So, none of these are really uncommon, actually, in our experience. How about, would you prove that? Yeah. Was that your question? Did I answer that? Okay.
I was just thinking, big chunks, significant capital LFIs that we haven't talked about, such as road improvements, traffic, utilities, you could get to 10 million per foot.
Yeah, absolutely. You could, yeah. And that's why we're kind of focusing on some of the others, like how can we bring them down and make this more tolerable and tangible, more tolerable and acceptable to the community. So we're just kind of vetting out a variety of different ideas right now. We had in the survey put out a lot of questions about these, like which ones do you think we should not put in the bond issue, and we should look at local fundraising or other revenue sources. And the big ones, which we already discussed, was auditorium, and the other was like relocation of the central office to Quaker Dome. So far, the initial feedback is don't put that in the bond issue. If we agree to move forward with that, let's explore other opportunities. That's where we are in terms of discussion right now.
So, I really think of maybe the most important
item that needs to be talked about, and I apologize if it was discussed in the first 3 meetings that I did not attend, is the location. And I come back to that every time because the one question I wonder that's been asked, at least to this group, I know people don't like the current school, do they like the current spot where the school is? Because I feel like that's really important for, one, passage of a levy. You know, we've had it for 100 years at a site in town, right? And I keep hearing that there's only land available in the country, right, on the outskirts of town. So is that what the public wants? I mean,
you have to pay for it, it's a non-profit.
yeah, does the public want that, or does the public want a school like not the existing school at the existing site, right, or at least somewhere near the existing site? Because I feel like that could help generate support and show good stewardship. You don't want to see a repeat of what happened 4 years ago.
Right.
So, I mean, has that question been asked? I mean, does people like the existing school location?
We've asked that amongst the committee up to this point. And we've had, up until these last 2 meetings, we've had probably 60 community members attend the previous meetings. And the majority, not 100%, you'll never have 100% consensus on anything, but the majority stated to replace the facility and explore other opportunities in terms of sites. But the preference to be as close to the center location as possible. So we had, and you can go online and look at it, we had an entire presentation and
Yeah, I
we,
looked at it.
okay,
Yeah.
on a variety of different sites. The problem with the existing high school site is there's no green space, so it's swing space. Where do the students go if we're gonna rebuild a new facility on there? That has a significant cost impact to move those students, call it swing space. They have to either, you have to find an abandoned, we've done things such as renting out abandoned or closed down Catholic schools or private schools and temporarily placing students there, or actually done seas of trailers. And that, both of those options have a lot of cost impact. That doesn't mean that won't end up being our solution. But we have talked about it. That was a long way to get around to say yes. We have discussed it. Now, we still need another step of going to the community, and we're in preparation of launching, preparing to launch a community survey, and that will be one of the questions.
And the other follow-up question to that, and has to do with if it's the desire of the community, they like the location, right? It's not working how it's currently laid out, right? It's for a number of reasons. Like, maybe it's worth revisiting having a separate 7-8 building at the, let's say, like Central Elementary site, right? A new building there, and then you have more than enough space for 4 grades at the current high school, middle school site.
You'd still have to relocate them.
But there'd be, yeah, sure, you'd have to like state students.
Yeah.
But you'd have all of the other elementary schools to work with.
Thank you.
Right? But then you have a third building, you have a third of the cost, you have a third maintenance, you have a third of everything that you've done in your power to like make it to, right?
Right, it was really interesting in the very beginning when we've been taking like a pulse really very consistently throughout. And one of the very initial large consensus was 2 buildings instead of 3. Really, really surprised me because it's such a big consolidation. But it has been very a strong opinion of the committee to have a 2-building solution as a so far.
You guys married? That's fine.
I think the problem, I shouldn't say the problem, the opportunity that we have, some positive about it, is that we talk about our wants, but our wants are going to be dictated by what we have to work with. So, I mean, ideally, I'd love to have it all on one campus. I'd love to be in the center of town. I'd love to have green space, walking trails, all that stuff. But that's not going to happen. I really do think that, I made the same thought, if you consolidate the elementary schools, vacate Central Elementary, start construction on the central elementary side of the middle school. You tear down the existing middle school while you leave the high school intact, and then you start building a new high school behind the existing high school.
It's a solution.
I think that we're going down the same path we went last time, which I didn't record. But we have a list of wants, but we don't know where we're putting them. And we're gonna talk about going to a vote, and we still don't know, you know, if the land is an LFI, well, we're not gonna maybe get a land in the auditorium, but if we don't have to buy land, then maybe that's money that could go towards another LFI. But I just don't think the community's gonna vote it, you know, get a lot of support on, well, we don't really know if that's gonna be an LFI. I don't know how that'll work, I guess.
To second that, I think we should reverse engineer this from day one. If we're looking at site selections 8 months ago, if any of them cost more than the legal fees, they're not a viable site because we have free land. The second thing would be, we've been to all these meetings, and we can develop this, we can develop. The only thing that matters is how much we're asking for the folks. If we're asking for $20 per 100,000, and we failed 20 levies over the last 30 years at $3, $5, $8, why are we even doing these exercises? We're just wasting everybody's time.
It'll be interesting to see what Bradley Council tells us next week. It's our next step to understand what is this big picture of looking at things.
So, in your architectural professional opinion, where our high school and middle school sits now, can you put a new high school, middle school there? Do you have enough space? The answer, just a high school, right? But I mean, is there enough space there? I mean, did you really know, right? I mean, where would you put the parking? Where would you put a new auditorium?
So one of the studies I did was combining the high school site, all of even the houses was just asked in between and central in one site.
Okay.
That was
So
only
you are
13 acres.
But see, that's why we can go up. We have the same thing without parking before. Here we have a middle school, an auditorium with 600, a gym that's bigger than the gym we're gonna get, and no parking. So I mean, I'm in the real estate world as well. All you gotta do is go up, and we can replace the
Honestly,
same.
if I remember right from the OCC, 3 floors. If I remember right from all my reading from years ago, we go 3 floors.
That's for an exception, because we can't pass the levy, or we're sitting here in 20 years, we'll be the number 30.
Well, we can go more than 3,
And
4.
last time I read,
We do.
years ago, you could do 3 floors, and that was your max, without a lot of like elevators and access and stuff like
We
that.
did 4 floors in Cleveland for campus elementary, so maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was at that
It was
point in
acceptable
time.
from all my reading. I remember reading 3 floors was the max they would fund, and after that, it's like, there's a lot of, some you gotta do.
And and I know some people don't believe it, there is a cost, because it's going up, it increases the square footage for certain. No. It charges square foot of the building. So we have to enforce it. Standard. So anyway, but you guys have had great feedback.
My one, on all these creative solutions, we've got to find something that we have a feasible way to pass. And here we are in the 8th meeting, we don't know site, don't know what cost, we don't know what we're asking voters. And this is the first meeting we've had an open dialogue where people can come with different ideas and ways. The goal is to pass a levy, not to develop something that we all walk out of here 2 weeks ago. There's no way this is going. And I feel like we missed that mark for the last 7 weeks.
My opinion on location, I think that the current site, the benefits of that are, unfortunately, voters in Philly will say, I don't want the high school near me. So even if you buy a tract of land just outside of town, anybody in that neighborhood, right, say it's School Town, right, buy a nice farm out there, nobody on the south side is gonna want all that traffic, right? We already got that discussion at the elementary school. Going past our house, you already have the traffic at the current location. So that is ends that argument, right? You don't have an argument there because you're not changing anything. As far as green space goes, when you knock down Central Elementary, you're a block away from a very nice area that you could use as green space that we already own. Just getting thoughts.
I think the whole point is, it is very hard for us to make a wish list when we don't know where the location is.
Right.
And I think, you know, regardless of whether it's in town or outside of town, I mean, I come from a school district that's 4 buildings in 4 different towns, and we somehow made it work. And so I think, like, it's not the emotional part of where it's at, it's, you can't make a wish list of what you want unless you know where it's at.
Right, and that was the feedback we got, you know, from the survey as well, and it is very challenging, right? It's extremely challenging. And unfortunately, the talks that are happening behind the scenes about sites, if we have any additional opportunities, take some time. So what we're doing is trying to talk about all of the other things and trying to get a pulse on that in the meantime to make use of this time till we know definitively, you know, what our options are with sites. And we're just about, we're getting there. We're almost there. So don't get discouraged about that. All the work that you have done has been very productive. Whether you realize it or not, and we are making good progress. So hang in there for the next month. Let's see what transpires with the talks with bonding council, with sites, and we hope to have some good information for you in the next meeting in 2 weeks. So did you want to close with anything additional, Amy?
No, I just truly appreciate your time and your feedback. I thought it was an excellent dialogue tonight, and there were a lot of good points. And I understand the point about creating this fantasy building that is everyone's wish list that is just impractical in terms of cost or location. However, I think it's important for us to have an understanding of what that would look like, and then as we are narrowing down the location and determining what that will cost, we will be able to look at that ideal and then figure out what we can live with that will also work with our site and our costs. So thank you for the work. Hang in there. We are so very close to having some very good information for you.
Great. Thank you.